or make great contributions to debates if you are tired, overwhelmed, and have not taken the time to refresh your internal batteries. 1 Corinthians 3:16 states, "Do you not know that you are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in you?" Louis May Alcott said, "Keep good company, read good books, love good things, and cultivate soul and body so faithfully as you can. Take the time for physical care and refreshment. A tired person cannot serve with patience, creativity, or kindness. After a while, fatigue and weariness may cause you to operate in a manner that may cause harm and disappointment to others. Take time for spiritual renewal so that you can cast your burdens on the Lord and be refreshed by His Spirit to take on the new challenges and circumstances that lie before you. Also, this time can allow you to refine your priorities and to be endued with the wisdom that you will need. Take time for emotional renewal so that you can get rid of negative and uncomfortable emotions that you are carrying, like stress, anxiety, and worries. They can be replaced with strength, endurance, joy, and fortitude. Philippians 4:6-7 states, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus." I close with this quote from an unknown author. "An empty lantern provides no light. Self-care is the fuel that allows your light to shine brightly." Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I pray for all senators today. Help them to value themselves. Help them to practice self-care. Let them not be afraid to take physical breaks, to cast burdens on you, and to allow you to refresh them anew. As they seek to be balanced, go before them and level high mountains, lift up valleys, and grant them your favor. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Please join in the prayer of our Lord. Our Father, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Good morning, Senators. Good morning. I want to thank our chaplain for her spiritual words and guidance. Order of business for April 6, 2022. Adoption of minutes.
Madam President, good morning. I move that the minutes of the session of the Senate held on Monday, 4th of April, 2022, be adopted.
Is there a seconder?
A second.
It has been moved and second that the minutes of April 4th, 2022 be adopted. As many as in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. It is carried. The minutes of April 4th, 2022 are adopted. Motion of leave of absence. Motion for leave of absence, leave to resign seats. Swearing in of new senators. Communications by the President. Messages for Governor General. Messages from the House of Assembly. Laying of documents by ministers. Communications by ministers. Communications by senators. Questions. Answers to questions. Preparation of petitions. Appointment of select committees. Reports of committees. First reading of bills. Second reading and committal of bills.
Madam President, I move that the Senate do now suspend for 15 minutes.
Is there a seconder? It has been moved and second that the Senate is suspended for 15 minutes. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. The Senate is hereby suspended for 15 minutes. Yeah. Right. The next item on the order of business is the second reading and committal of bills. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder.
Madam President, thank you very much. Today I rise to move the following bills that with the concurrence of the opposition we'll debate as a compendium of financial services bills. The first being a bill for an act to amend the Proceeds of Crime Act. The second being a bill for an act to amend the Anti-Terrorism Act to empower the Financial Intelligence Unit to impose an administrative penalty on any financial institution who contravenes any provision thereof. And the third is a bill for an act to amend the Register of Beneficial Ownership Act. Madam President, we should, however, also be debating today a bill for an act to amend the Financial Transactions Reporting Act, if not for the actions of the Leader of the Opposition in that other place. For the benefit of members, especially the newer members in this place and the newer members in that other place, I want to demonstrate how not to legislate for the interests of the Bahamian people. When the Compendium of Financial Services bills were tabled, Madam President, the Financial Transaction Reporting Amendment Bill of 2022 was also supposed to be tabled with the Compendium. But unfortunately, due to an administrative error in the Cabinet Office, it was not tabled at the same time. As is customary, Madam President, consensus of the opposition in that other place was sought and received from the member for St. Anne's, to debate the Financial Transactions Reporting Amendment Bill with the others that were tabled prior. Madam President, the Leader of the Opposition apparently must have had some point to prove, either to us as the government, or to that other leader, the member for Killarney, or maybe to the leader in waiting. In any event, he was heard saying that he had to make a power play and decided they were not agreeing to debate the bill with the Compendium.
Out of order.
The chair recognizes Senator Hanfield. What is your point of order?
That the Leader of the Opposition in the other place never stood on his feet to say anything in the House of Assembly. What he was overheard to be saying purportedly can only be hearsay. And in any order, did he act contrary to the rules of the law? Did the opposition in the other place act contrary to the rules of the law? Now, we've come here over and over and agreed that bills would be laid in this place for the first time, and we debate them. That's not normal. It's not normal. It's not normal. What should happen is they should be laid, they should be given time, and then we come back and debate them. So to excoriate the Leader of the Opposition or the opposition for this, I mean, on a day when you just said yourself that we agreed that we will move on. Let's move on. Let's move on in the interest of the country.
Thank you, Senator Hanfield.
Madam President,
Senator Pinder.
if the other side truly wanted to move on in the interest of the country, they would not have made this power play against whoever they were deeming to make it against. Madam President, this is an unfortunate demonstration where political ego has gotten in the way of legislating for the best interest of Bahamian people. This is a true shame, and the member, Madam President, should be frankly embarrassed, especially as parliamentary convention generally provides that matters such as financial services bills are generally viewed as in the national interest and not to be controversial and not to provide an opportunity to encourage controversy, which is what happened. Because I took grave offense to the actions of the leader of the opposition. Well, that's fine. You can do that. You can do that. Your leader was wrong. He was wrong.
Senators.
And you are wrong.
He was wrong. And he should be embarrassed.
You can't blow hot and cold. You come in.
No, I blow hot all the time. Don't worry about that.
Senators.
Madam President, I said what I had to say
Senator Pinder.
on that issue,
Yes.
and I will leave it alone.
Thank you, Senator Pinder. But before you move on, Senator Pinder, the chair needs to know exactly what is the bill that you're moving the second reading on.
I stated the three bills. Well, I move for a bill for an act to amend the Proceeds of Crime Act as second reading. We will debate the compendium of financial services bills that are here for the second reading. That's right. I start out like this. No problem.
Senator Pinder.
These amendments, Madam President, are required to provide for the continued modernization of our international regulatory obligations, including providing adequate penalty provisions to be a deterrent to violations of the law and to make certain required amendments to remain compliant with international best practices and treaties and international commitments to of which the Bahamas is a party. All of the underlying pieces of legislation were passed to ensure compliance with the anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing obligations of the Financial Action Task Force. Madam President, on the Register of Beneficial Ownership amendments, as Parliament would be aware, the Register of Beneficial Ownership Act of 2018, otherwise known as ROBO, was passed to provide for the competent authority to establish and maintain an electronic database of beneficial ownership details for all corporate and legal entities registered in the Bahamas, and to permit search of that database of every corporate and legal entity registered or resident in the Bahamas by a designated person upon the request of specified authorities designated in the Act. Madam President, ROBO provided for the development of a beneficial ownership secure search system, and this is the electronic database in which all of the beneficial ownership of companies is uploaded and maintained. The implementation of BOSS, that is what we call the platform, brought the Bahamas into compliance with several recommendations and related requirements of the Financial Action Task Force. The full implementation of this program of beneficial ownership, Madam President, was a critical component in terms of the European anti-money laundering blacklist. The amendments provided for in the bill before us will assist to tighten the provisions and reflect requirements to further comply with international best practices regarding transparency of beneficial information of companies and other legal entities registered and incorporated in our country. Madam President, the proposed amendments are as follows. Clause 2 of the bill defines law enforcement authority and supervisory authority, as in fact this was not included in the original legislation, rather sloppy. Clause 3 of the bill imposes a duty on legal entities and registered agents to ensure that the information provided or recorded in the bill is accurate. And Clause 4 of the bill provides for the addition of the Gaming Board and the Ministry of Finance to request a search of the secure search system. Requests for these searches, however, by the Ministry of Finance are confined to those duties under International Tax Cooperation Act and Automatic Exchange, so they cannot be used as a fishing expedition by the Ministry of Finance. Clause 5 of the bill seeks to correct an error, and Clause 6 of the bill provides an administrative penalty regime bolstering the enforcement tools to deter non-compliance. Madam President, I turn to the amendments to the Anti-Terrorism Act 2018. The Anti-Terrorism Act 2018 was enacted to implement FATF requirements regarding the Bahamas regime for combating terrorist acts, terrorist financing, and the proliferation of the financing, interactions with the United Nations, international cooperation, and enforcement tools. The amendment being proposed empowers the Financial Intelligence Unit to impose an administrative penalty on any financial institution who contravenes the act. Members may note that this section calls for financial institutions to report any property used for commissions of offenses under the act, commissions related to anti-terrorism. In the original legislation, no criminal or administrative penalty was assigned to this requirement. So they forbid the violation of the act, but gave no penalties for violating the act. The amendment will assist the FIU in enforcing compliance with the provisions and provide the necessary penalty regime. Madam President, amendments to the Proceeds of Crime Act 2018. The Proceeds of Crime Act 2018 was one of 3 pieces of primary legislation passed to bolster our anti-money laundering regime. The act is the law that embodies the Bahamas' legal provisions for its anti-money laundering, combating terrorist financing, and combating proliferation of financing regime. In a review of what we call the POCA, which is the Proceeds of Crime Act, it was found that a few provisions needed to be amended. Clause 2 of the bill deletes the term nominated officer and its definition and substituted the terms of money laundering reporting officer, or MLRO, in the definition. As in this jurisdiction, it is the money laundering reporting officer that is widely known to be relevant. There's no such thing as a reporting officer. Clause 3 of the bill makes an amendment to better align with international anti-money laundering standards, and Clause 4 of the bill provides that any document obtained under a production order is admissible in court. A very important amendment for the purposes of prosecution. As most of you would know, the Bahamas is a founding member of the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force. This is the Caribbean regional body of the Financial Action Task Force, which is the body that is responsible for anti-money laundering regulation worldwide. In 2015, the Bahamas underwent an assessment of its implementation of the FATF 40 recommendations. These are 40 recommendations promulgated by the Financial Action Task Force in order for a country to be compliant with global anti-money laundering standards. Since then, the Bahamas, across multiple administrations, have been working assiduously to achieve the compliance with all 40 of the recommendations. In May 2021, the Bahamas applied to the CFATF for a re-rating of 10 of the FATF recommendations, which were either partially compliant, and 2 recommendations that were revised since the Bahamas mutual valuation. During the CFATF plenary in December of 2021, only a couple of months ago, the Bahamas received 9 upgrades and 1 downgrade, and 2 ratings were maintained. As a result of the re-ratings just last December, the Bahamas is now compliant or largely compliant, which are both regarded as passing grades, in 38 of the 40 recommendations. And this is important, and I explained this earlier to the press. This is an important achievement, but it's more important that we be 40 for 40. I had a conversation with the European High Commissioner last week. She came to see me as a courtesy call, and she posed an interesting question. She says, Attorney General, I have a hard time understanding this. I can open a bank account in Brussels in 30 to 60 minutes. But it takes you 30 or 60 days, you meaning the Caribbean, because she is getting this feedback from all over the Caribbean. And she said, why? And I explained, I said, look, 1, there's at least a double, if not a triple standard worldwide in these matters, right? 2, when we comply with FATF standards, and the EU says that we're non-compliant with their standards, when the FATF is the global standard, that causes problems because banking institutions now say they're high risk because they're not compliant with the EU standards, even though they're compliant with the FATF standards, right? And so I said, frankly, it is you, High Commissioner, who are causing the vexation amongst the people of the Caribbean, and in my interest, the people of the Bahamas, in the financial regulatory environment. It is you. And so I explained this morning and yesterday that we must achieve 40 for 40 compliance, even though the vast majority of the world does not, even though only one country in this hemisphere does. And even though I think there are only 3 or 4 countries in the entire world that do, the Bahamas has to, because we are judged differently. And we need to have excellence and perfection in this regard, because it filters down to our people. And it filters down to our people having a normal life in the financial environment of the country and the world. And if we can't achieve that, we have done a disservice to our people. Even though the vast majority of Bahamians may not understand the connection, those who do and those who are in charge, like myself, have to ensure that we do that for the betterment of our people, for the betterment of daily life, and for the betterment of the ease of doing business in this country. And that's why we're so focused on achieving excellence. We at the Office of the Attorney General are working hard, as I said, to submit for a re-rating of the final 2 of the 40 recommendations. That'd be Recommendation 8, which addresses not-for-profits, and Recommendation 15, which addresses the effective regulation and supervision and monitoring of virtual asset service providers in the digital asset space, the cryptocurrency space, which is something that the country is certainly focused on. The latter, which is Recommendation 15, the OAG is working closely with the Securities Commission of the Bahamas, as they are the primary regulator in the virtual asset space. So I think it's important that I give an update to the Bahamian people where we are on these processes and what we're looking to achieve. Recommendation 8, the not-for-profits. In May of 2022, which is actually next month, the Bahamas will make application to upgrade of the Recommendation 8 from a partially compliant status, which is a failing status, to a largely compliant, or better yet, a compliant status. This exercise entails conducting a risk assessment, a regulatory oversight, and sustained outreach as it relates to the not-for-profit sector in the country. In furtherance of this, yesterday and this morning, the Office of the Attorney General has hosted its 3rd nonprofit organization orientation and training program. The purpose of the training is to sensitize not-for-profit organizations on the risks of terrorist financing abuse. The training will serve to fulfill the country's international obligations as it relates to the FATF Recommendation 8. The Office of the Attorney General, as the regulator of the not-for-profit sector, will also coordinate on-site inspections to ensure compliance with AML obligations under the Act. I think it appropriate, however, Madam President, to emphasize that in the training sessions and in the inspections, not-for-profit organizations will be filtered on a risk-based approach. That is what a proper regulator should do. This means that those not-for-profits who have an indicia to higher AML risk will be prioritized. So you may ask, well, what does that mean, Ryan, an indicia for higher risk? This indicia includes not-for-profits who may have cross-border transactions, so I accept international donations, or I support other charitable endeavors outside of the country in foreign currency. They have either a high number of transactions occurring within their not-for-profit, or have larger aggregate contributions and single contributions and expenditures. And these aren't bad things, and we want all not-for-profits to be able to have a global reach and to be able to raise money as much as they can. But these are just indicia on a risk-based approach that we look at to determine whether there should be enhanced monitoring or not. Alternatively, Madam President, smaller, primarily domestic not-for-profits, such as churches, are filtered out of this enhanced review. They are smaller not-for-profits, almost entirely dealing in B dollars, almost entirely dealing with a small bucket of donors or congregation, and mostly having a low aggregate amount of donations as compared to larger multinational charities. And this is an example of how we approach a true risk-based approach. So in our training sessions yesterday and today, we have 4 in total. The room was filled, which shows a commitment of the not-for-profit sector to be a participant and be well regulated. But it was filled with those who we already had risk rated and would propose to have some sort of indicia that was higher risk than the smaller local ones, which was good. So we, one, don't trouble or stress or provide unnecessary anxiety to institutions that don't need it. And so that is the approach we have taken. We think it is a proper approach. It is compliant with FATF standards, and we are advancing as well as we can, and we anticipate being able to have a full re-rating application next month on the not-for-profits. With respect to recommendation 15, Madam President, on virtual asset service providers. Recognizing the need to adequately mitigate the money laundering and terrorist financing risks associated with virtual asset activities. And when we talk about virtual assets, we're talking about digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, tokens, coins, all of the digital asset space and virtual asset space. The FATF set out a more detailed implementation requirements for the effective regulation and supervision and monitoring of virtual asset service providers. So these are the companies that actually participate in this space. And under the law of the Bahamas, they are regulated in this space, so they must hold a license. As we continue to grow the digital asset business in the Bahamas, it is imperative that we advance a re-rating exercise with respect to virtual asset service providers. The Securities Commission of the Bahamas has AML rules out for consultation as we speak that are applicable to virtual asset service providers. They are also advancing amendments to the DARE Act, as well as conducting a risk assessment of the virtual asset service provider business in the Bahamas. The OAG and the Securities Commission anticipate again having a complete re-rating submission by next month, May of 2022. Achieving compliant and largely compliant ratings for all 40 recommendations would put the Bahamas in a class of only 2 countries in this hemisphere. We will be a country that has strived over multiple administrations for excellence, and under this administration has achieved excellence. It will demonstrate the Bahamas is committed to excellence in the financial services industry, excellence in fintech, and will position the Bahamas for growth of good business in growing elements of the international financial services industry. Madam President, before I sit down, I would like to briefly turn our attention to the importance of consultation and engagement with the financial services industry when it comes to tax matters and other legislative reforms. Madam President, this industry is rather sensitive to abrupt and unannounced changes, especially when there's no consultation. Unfortunately, this is exactly what we saw in the prior administration. Tax changes without consultation, announcement, or warning that was contrary to the long-standing operation of the financial services industry and has caused considerable anxiety within the industry. We have engaged with the financial services industry.
Point of order, Madam President.
The chair recognizes Senator Darren Henfield. What is your point of order, please?
I fear that the Attorney General may be misleading without the intent to do so. No. You already said what you had to say. Let me say, yeah. Because I am fully aware that we consulted very broadly with the financial services sector and those who would be engaged and how we look at these taxes on a regular basis. So to say broadly, or to just put out there that we failed to consult, because that's the same thing they're saying about y'all, That's the same thing they're telling us about y'all, So let's temper that a little bit, right? Maybe.
Thank you, Senator Henfield. Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder.
Thank you, Madam President. We have engaged with the financial services industry through the Bahamas Financial Services Board on a continual basis and have been working with them to try to remedy the poor legislative governance of the prior administration. Madam President, I will highlight some of these issues. On a sale of a business, Madam President, Under Section 2C of the VAT Amendment Act of 2020, a disposition of a business includes the sale, exchange, or other transfer or disposition in whole or in part of the goodwill or other property comprised in a business, either directly or indirectly to another person, and includes the transfer of shares in a company. Right? Broad application. The consequence of this amendment, Madam President, was that IBCs that have no nexus to the Bahamas, no business interest in the Bahamas, no real estate interest in the Bahamas, and no other connection with the Bahamas other than incorporation could be subject to a 6% value-added tax on the sale of their shares. This has never been the case in the Bahamas and should not be the case in the Bahamas. Value-added tax is a tax that is a domestic consumption tax and should not be extended to activity and should not be extended to activities wholly outside of the Bahamas. This has threatened the IBC incorporation business in the Bahamas and must be remedied consistent with current law. What the industry proposing, and what I would agree with, is that if a company holds a business license, or a subsidiary of that holding company holds a business license in the Bahamas, then the transfer of shares will be subject to VAT. If they don't, then they're not subject to VAT. It's a simple fix that is consistent with the philosophy of value-added tax and consistent with domestic law. The same can be seen, Madam President, with respect to the pledge of shares. We have a situation with the pledge of shares of an IBC and the stamp tax that is payable because there was never any clarification after the former administration passed the Removal of Preferential Exemptions Act. This has likewise caused much anxiety in the industry and has caused us to lose IBC business over the last few years. There are instances where the shares of an IBC, an international business company, are pledged as a security for a loan. Happens frequently. The IBC is deemed non-resident for exchange control purposes. All of his activities are conducted exclusively outside of the Bahamas. It owns no real estate in the Bahamas, nor any interest in real estate or business in the Bahamas. Under the law, the pledge of shares are subject to stamp tax when they never were before. The former administration issued a poorly drafted tax ruling to try to get around this issue. However, a tax ruling does not have the same authority as statute, and there remains much ambiguity within it. Tax reform and amendments are by their nature disruptive if there is not proper consultation, and especially in industries where capital is mobile and there is significant competition among jurisdictions. The prior administration did modify tax laws without consultation, without discussions, and in cases without logic. This cannot be the proper approach of this administration. A quick fix to the pledge of shares issues models after that of the one on transfer of shares issue. If you have no connection to the Bahamas, if you have no business license in the Bahamas, if you have no real property in the Bahamas, it should not be subject to stamp tax in the Bahamas. No, it's not the problem we're having with the OECD, because the problem you have with the OECD is you treat people differently explicitly because of who owns the business. So I would treat a IBC owned by a foreigner different than an IBC owned by a Bahamian. I would treat it, and we did it by central bank classification. If you're non-resident, you're taxed one way. If you're resident, you're taxed the other way. That's the problem they have. They don't have a problem if you tax based upon your indicia and connection to your jurisdiction, because that could be foreign or Bahamian. That's the distinction. And the fix of these troubling pieces of legislation in taxation, especially in the financial services industry, is just that. You tax based upon your connection to the jurisdiction, not based upon the ownership of the entity. And that gets rid of the whole problem that we call ring fencing. That was the problem of the OECD, the ring fencing issue. So it just takes a little bit of creativity and thought, and a lack of spontaneity and a lack of consultation does not get you there, my good friend. I'm in the chair. and I'm going to fix it. So, Madam President, I appreciate your indulgence in this matter. I appreciate you allowing me to move for the second reading of what I term the Compendium of Financial Services Bills. I so move, Madam President.
Thank you for your contribution, Senator Pinder. Is there a seconder? The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Barry Griffin.
Madam President, I thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to rise in this place to speak on behalf of the Bahamian people. Madam President, since its inception, over 68 years ago, the Progressive Liberal Party has led the way in shaping the debate over expanding opportunity for all Bahamians. The PLP has a stellar track record in expanding the economy, and I think it derives from our belief that we are greater as a country when all Bahamians can touch and feel part of the economic success of the Bahamas. And for me, that is really what today's debate is about. My colleagues will delve into the minutiae of these bills, but I wanted to, for just a moment, make the connection of how the passage of these bills will tangibly affect the vast majority of Bahamians. By most measures, the financial services industry accounts for over 15% of our GDP and accounts for a large chunk of the highest paying jobs in the country. The financial services industry represents for many Bahamians access to opportunity and a chance at a better life. Make no mistake, the success of our financial services industry is indisputably linked to the greater success of our country. The last 2 years have been tough for Bahamians, Madam President. I think that's fair to say. And between the mishandling of the economy during the COVID pandemic by the last administration, and now what many supporters of the PLP feel is the PLP's slow start in correcting the many wrongs of the last 4 years, Bahamians are frustrated. But we know that people's frustrations run deeper than these most recent political battles. Their frustration is rooted in their own daily battles to make ends meet, to pay bills, to put food on the table, and to try to save a little money for a rainy day. It's rooted in the nagging sense that no matter how hard they work, the deck is stacked against them. And it's rooted in the fear that their kids won't be better off than they were. The majority of Bahamians, Madam President, may not follow the back and forth in this place or read all the policy details, but they experience in a very personal way the recent and dangerous trends of a lack of upward mobility in this country, the rising cost of goods and services, and the rising cost of living. I can tell you that Bahamians feel these. I believe that this is the defining challenge of our time, making sure that our economy works for every Bahamian so that each generation will be better than the last, making sure that a Bahamian who is working a full-time job can afford to live with dignity. And so for me, the success of our financial services industry is a key component in that. I wholeheartedly believe that the decisions we make in the financial services industry today will determine whether or not our children will grow up in a more prosperous Bahamas. As a commercial attorney who specializes in financial services law and regulation, I am particularly pleased to support these amendments. When the substantive acts were passed in 2018, they were needed to secure our industry. And a few short years later, we are in a similar position, having to update legislation to keep pace with recommendations from the Financial Action Task Force and international best practices. I remember when the Register Beneficial Ownership Act was passed. Many saw it as a nail in our coffin. From the 1930s, privacy was a main reason many of the world's rich domiciled their wealth in the Bahamas. But with changing attitudes toward wealth, taxation, and a renewed focus on anti-money laundering and terrorist financing laws, that is all but a thing of the past. We adapted to this change, and like most financial services jurisdictions around the world, the Bahamas collects ultimate beneficial ownership data for all legal entities based within the Bahamas. The amendments today will assist in tightening these provisions and reflect a few mandates to further comply with international best practices regarding transparency relating to legal entities within the Bahamas. Of particular note, Clause 6 of the bill seeks to amend the Act to provide for an administrative penalty regime, bolstering enforcement tools to deter non-compliance with the Principal Act. The bill also provides for natural justice, meaning that anyone sanctioned under the Act may be heard before the courts. Similarly, with the Anti-Terrorism Act, the amendment before us empowers the Financial Intelligence Unit to impose an administrative penalty on any financial institution who contravenes Section 70 of the Act. Section 70 calls for financial institutions to report any property used for the commission of offenses under the Act. In the original legislation, no criminal nor administrative penalty was assigned to this requirement. This amendment will assist the FIU in enforcing compliance with the provisions. The Proceeds of Crime Act is our jurisdiction's principal anti-money laundering, combating terrorist financing, and combating proliferation financing regime. Today's amendments simply align the Act with international anti-money laundering standards. One example being providing that any document obtained under a production order is admissible in court. Madam President, these amendments laid before us today are not extensive, but they are significant. They show the government's commitment to ensuring a robust financial services industry and thus ensuring that Bahamians can count on this industry to provide good paying jobs and opportunities for all Bahamians. We've seen that when our financial services industry isn't growing, there are diminished levels of upward mobility for Bahamians. And we know that decreasing mobility poses a fundamental threat to our way of life. It means that inflation hits harder and it's more difficult to keep pace with the rising cost of goods. So bills like these go a long way. Bahamians know that government can't solve everything, Madam President, but we also know that government action can make an enormous difference in increasing opportunity and bolstering ladders into the middle class. I believe that's our government's task, Madam President, to rebuild the Bahamas' economic foundation, to cause for the expansion of opportunity for this generation and the next. What drives me as a senator is to make sure that every striving, hardworking, optimistic kid in the Bahamas has every available opportunity to better his lot in life. That's why I'm proud to say that our government is currently in the process of studying the living wage and crafting a living wage mechanism that can work here in the Bahamas for Bahamians. A broad majority of Bahamians agree that the cost of living is far too high and that we should implement a living wage so that Bahamians can live with dignity. I happen to agree with these Bahamians, and I will continue to be one of the lawmakers at the table pushing until we achieve it. We are not going to resolve all of our political debates over the best ways to increase upward mobility or how to tackle the increased cost of living. But is it important that we have these serious national discussions surrounding these issues? For the longer the current trends are allowed to continue, the more it will feed the cynicism and fear that many Bahamians are feeling right now. that they'll never be able to pay their debt to the bank, they'll never be able to save enough to buy a home, or that they'll never see their children land a good paying job. Madam President, I never believe the government can solve every problem. I know ultimately that our strength is grounded in our people, individuals out there striving, working, making things happen. But government can't just sit at the sidelines, Madam President. The government can and should help us tackle our toughest problems, and I can't think of a more vexing issue on the minds of Bahamians than coping with the onslaught of price increases. Madam President, if we refocus our energies on building an economy that grows for everybody and building a robust and compliant financial services sector, then I remain confident that our future still looks brighter than our past and that the best days for this country we love are still ahead. As always, Madam President, I thank you for the opportunity to rise in this place, and I'm pleased to second the motion to support these Compendium of Financial Services bills. May God continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Register of Beneficial Ownership 2018. As many? The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Darren Henfield.
Thank you, Madam President. We've had a wonderful prayer by the chaplain. He heard happen in the other place, not hearing it himself, by a speaker who purportedly was not even on his feet. That wasn't necessary, especially if you say we come here to debate these financial bills which are ought not to be contentious. I understand the pressure when the international community, we've sat in that place, the international community is calling for certain things, and we have a short space of time to respond. And so I appreciate the burden of that. But, you know, you can't say on the one side of your mouth, let's cooperate, and then on the next side of your mouth, excoriate people who you deem are not cooperating, who you deem are not cooperating. Another thing I'd like to say is that the same technical experts who draft these legislations for the current government are by and large the same ones that drafted these legislations for us. And so when we suggest that the government or the former administration didn't do as good a job as it ought to have done, we also lay some of that blame on the technical people who advised, who counseled, who researched, and who invariably end up drafting these bills. We are very pleased to hear that the government is revisiting the reporting requirements for churches, whom in the general scheme of things are minor players in this regard. And so I commend the government for that. Obviously, we have the right man in the chair, and we are going to get the kind of results that we seek. And even though I'll say it, we won't find ourselves within the next 4 years in this place again, trying to address these moving goalposts that we get out of Europe, because we now are going to find a panacea for all of our ills. And you know, Madam President, we come to this place in response to the cry from the global community, this is the fact, which asserts that historic systemic economic failures have resulted in base erosion of taxes and has negatively impacted the integrity of our financial services industry. And in the result, since around 1999 or so, we've been working in tandem with the international community to shore up those areas in our financial services sector that were identified as obstructive to the process of ensuring integrity in the system. I mean, we all know how important the financial services sector is to the economy of the Bahamas. And for that reason, we continue to work as assiduously as we can, as effectively as we can, to ensure that we are on, Brother Russell, the right wicket in this arena. Madam President, it is my considered view, however, that the amendments we effect today to the Anti-Terrorism Act, the Financial Transactions Reporting Act, the Proceeds of Crime Act, let me scratch that one out. I delete that one. The Proceeds of Crime Act and the Register of Beneficial Owners, Ownership Act, will not be sufficient in the ultimate scheme of things to satisfy the demands that will continue to come from those in Europe and elsewhere, whilst their institutions continue to operate by the rules for which we are censored and sanctioned. You know, those individuals operating in the financial services sector in Guernsey and Jersey and Delaware and in some instances even in Florida, they're not laboring under the same burdens as we do to operate in this field. I remember studying in the United States, and it took me, going back to the conversation you had with the commissioner from Europe, it took me about an hour to open up a bank account right on a base where I worked and served and studied. Took me about an hour. I shudder to think how long it takes a Bahamian to open up such a bank account in the Bahamas even now. And then you ask us why? How do you come and ask us why? And it's because of all of these various reporting obligations that you placed upon us, which requires the banks to be extra judicious in their KYC and know your client dispositions. And so to ask that, I guess it was just for conversation and a circular question. I on the other side now, I can speak freely, you know, unlike you can, right? You know, so to come here and ask us why it takes so long, I mean, disingenuous, right? Disingenuous. I read somewhere, Madam President, that inequality in all its forms is the defining global problem, and increasingly the defining political problem of our age. States like ours, which are economically dependent on stronger countries for our sustenance and very survival, are forced to allow said stronger countries to exercise significant control over our economic and political behavior. Failure to follow their edicts results in us being placed on lists, black and gray, and whichever other color they can imagine, which describe us, our jurisdiction, as harmful tax havens. Something we take the most offense to, because we know how much work we do to try and keep up with the demands that are constantly coming toward us. As such, we are compulsorily required to endure this vicious cycle of making laws to further regulate our financial services industry and then amending them at the whim and fancy of the Organization for Cooperation and Development, which we refer to as OECD, the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, and the European Commission. We've seen in our last administration that even separate countries in Europe determined that they would sanction the Bahamas outside of their sanctioning regimes. In France sanctioned us, you know. And so here you are, you put together a group that has oversight and responsibility for assisting how we stay compliant and how we operate within the industry. And then you step outside of that group and you sanction us. I mean, how do we prepare for that? How do we prepare for that? All in an effort to dispel and correct issues associated with the financial services sector that are described by our financial overlords, namely the FATF, in this case, as detrimental rules and practices which impair the effectiveness of our money laundering prevention and detection system, as well as the results of our judicial inquiries into this area, so as to determine criteria for defining the non-cooperative countries and territories. All of the countries in the Caribbean who dare venture in a big way into the financial services sector and industry are faced with this very same challenge. This was an issue that was constantly before CARICOM. How do we work together with attorneys general? How do we work together with finance ministers? How do we work together with foreign ministers to do it? I mean, we managed to convince the United Nations recently that when you look at overseas development assistance, it ought not be granted based upon your GDP, income to GDP per capita, but on your vulnerabilities. And I was so pleased to hear Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, speak to that in 2019, I think it was, when we went to the UN. You know, because in our region, in our jurisdiction, one fell swoop comes Irma, one fell swoop comes Dorian, and wipes away all the plans of the government, no matter what they are. You know, and GDP ain't got nothing to do with that. Even powerfully rich countries, income ain't got nothing to do with that, are assisted after such catastrophic events. So these amendment bills, we are advised, will put the necessary administrative penalty regimes in place to punish nefarious conduct, the nefarious conduct of bad actors, whenever and wherever it is found, and to ensure that there are consequences for non-compliance. Madam President, we must note, however, that we are constantly adjusting and readjusting to keep up with the demands made on us in this regard. There's very little choice if we wish to continue our participation in the international financial community at the level to which we have become accustomed. We can ill afford to jeopardize our ability to interact in the correspondent banking facilities that enable our touristic economy to thrive. Can you imagine the gunboat diplomacy and the threat that says to you that if you don't comply with these obligations that we're putting on you, a tourist will fly into the Bahamas, go to the fish fry, pull out his credit card, his or her credit card, stick it into one of those machines, and it will not work. This is the kind of pressure that we receive in our country from these various groups that send these edicts our way. That said, Madam President, we must also remain cognizant of the constant moving of the proverbial goalposts every time we adjust the rules of the game. We do so in an effort to keep up with the apparent constant changes that we, in the Minister administration, we thought it an absolutely imperative to establish a permanent presence in Brussels that would be able to more readily address those individuals and those organizations that invariably had the power and the say. You know, we found that just before one Christmas, and Bahamians are all getting ready for Jonquil, most of them in the shack, someone says to us that, you know, we sent you an email. We sent you an email that wasn't responded to, and for that, you stand to be sanctioned. An email, right? Not a phone call to the OPM or the Minister of Finance. Just an email, right? And so we thought it absolutely necessary to establish an embassy in Brussels that would put a face to the Bahamas and to see these people who operate within this sphere, and so they can understand that when you make and take these decisions, you are in fact affecting the lives of real human beings who are trying to survive. And so we firmly believe that it was an imperative to do so. And we believe that through serious diplomatic and other efforts, that the Bahamas was removed from the European Union's blacklist on the 7th of January of this year, to which the Attorney General spoke. Madam President, as much as we are loath to do so, some government of the Bahamas, I'll move on to that area that I hope you, Storm and Ryan the Lion, have the umption and the gumption to fix, because it is likely to come during your administration. As much as we're loath to do so, some government of the Bahamas is going to have to publicly address the need to look at our tax regime, which is considered regressive and a lazy way out. Any view toward the implementation of a global minimum tax will require wide-ranging and comprehensive private and public sector dialogue and consultations. Very happy to hear that you are a proponent of broad consultations. And as I said to you earlier, they were telling us that you're not, in the same way that they were telling you that we were not, right? And so, Pastor Bishop Clark used to say, sometimes you have to smoke out the ghost. And you do that by getting everybody in the same room and letting everybody speak their piece. And you smoke out the ghost and you lay that to rest. We're gonna have this discussion sooner or later. That way, we will be in a position to, as much as practically possible, be the master of our own ship, as opposed to being forced to do so by some external body whom are not in any way inclined or concerned toward our fiscal survivability. All we're saying is that it would be wise and prudent to have a national discussion on an overall tax regime, and perhaps we might begin with a white paper on the subject. Madam President, as I move on, I'm compelled to speak to some of the issues associated with particularly one or two of the foreign clearing banks that are resident in the Bahamas. They made a killing in our heyday, did tremendously well. All across this country, you could find a bank, particularly those from Canada. And then, came the upgrades to technology, and there's no longer an interest for the regular brick and mortar kind of establishment that Bahamians have become accustomed to. And so we're now being forced into that digital space to be able to conduct and transact our business in the banking sphere. And so we need to do what is necessary, I think, as a country to mitigate the potential harmful impact that may result to our people because of it, particularly those individuals in the Family Islands where these banks just ripped up and left from. It takes someone who lives in Green Turtle Key has to take a ferry, get in their car, drive into Marsh Harbor to pay perhaps a utility bill. That's not fair, unless the utility company determines that they're going to go on the ferry and collect, which then raises an interest for security, right? But I remember as a young man, as a boy, we used to have a thriving post office bank that worked and functioned well. Yeah, that's the same thing they said to me when I said it back then, in the other place where we used to be, right? That we had problems with the integrity of the banks. But let's fix it. Our people in the Family Islands, whatnot, and I'm not laying the blame at any particular government's feet for this, right? Let's fix it. We can't afford to take the Bank of the Bahamas and put it in all of the islands in the same way, right? And so we can look at the post office banking system. And I think I heard the minister speak to this. I read something somewhere where the minister mentioned that this was going to happen, and I want to applaud that effort and encourage that effort. That Bahamians, because you don't want Bahamians keeping their money's under the mattress, like my grandmother used to do, or in other places where my grandmother used to keep her money, tucked away safely, in her bosom, right? And she'd always go into her bosom and find her monies. I'm also concerned about some of the reports that I heard after Dorian, where members of the community who were paying their mortgages, And the banking establishment was supposed to be taking out their insurance, as they did all along the way for the mortgage, and to go to the bank afterwards, and the bank to say to them that, we didn't pay your insurance, and so then now you're not able to get the benefits that you ought to have gotten had your insurance been paid. Now in America, that would have been a wonderful place for a class action suit. In the Bahamas, I think we call it another kind of action, a representative action that ought to be taken. And I implore and counsel and advise those individuals who still may be aggrieved to consider. I'm not asking you for a job as an attorney. I'm speaking to you as a senator who believe that it was wrong if it happened to you, and you should do all that you can to recover, because you had an expectation, a legitimate expectation, that the bank which you entrusted to pay your insurance would have done so, as they have done always without fail, and for which they collected your funds to do so, right? They're obligated by the law. You hear the Attorney General, they're obligated by the law, so we're already ahead. We have him on our side, right? They're already obligated to do so, right? And so those are some of the few points that I wanted to make, Madam President. I want to say that we support this compendium of bills. We understand the need for them. You know that one, you don't always have it how you want it. Stop smarting over that one. Let's move on. Let's move on. I even had it. I even had it in here. I support this compendium of bills intended to strengthen our financial administrative regime toward punishing bad actors, and so, Madam President, may God continue to bless and keep the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and I thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you, Senator Henfield, for your contribution. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Quinton Lightburn.
Madam President, I rise this morning in these honorable chambers once again with a grateful heart to the Almighty God for allowing me the privilege to stand in this place once again. I stand here this morning to debate the Compendium of Financial Service Bills, which will move our country forward and allow us to meet international financial standards. The Financial Transaction Report Amendment Bill 2022 stands out to me, especially as a financial professional. One of the primary objects of this bill is to impose an obligation on every financial institution to provide annual training to staff in anti-money laundering and counter-financing of terrorism. To some, this may seem frivolous and unapplicable to the Bahamas, but believe it or not, our country must be very alert and prepared for these possible threats. The Financial Transaction Report Regulations Bill of 2018 was enacted to bring the Bahamas KYC, Know Your Customer legislation, into compliance with international best standards established by the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision and the Financial Action Task Force. It contains provisions on required customer due diligence for all types of facility holders. Also, in that bill, it is spoken that there must be exemptions to thresholds for the holders and applicants for these accounts. The financial service providers were also obligated to retrieve the necessary KYC information. This 2022 amendment seeks to primarily strengthen the Compliance Commission's enforcement powers to bring them in line with international anti-money laundering standards. The Proceeds of Crime Act, POCA 2018, was a piece of legislation that enabled the country to be delisted from the Financial Action Task Force Grey List and the EU AML Blacklist. But in review of the POCA Act, it was found that there were a few provisions that needed to be tweaked. The 2021 amendment will delete the term nominated officer and its definition and substitute it with the term money laundering reporting officer or an MLRO, which is more applicable for our jurisdiction. An MLRO is a key position within any financial institution, and that person must protect the integrity of the company. The financial services sector is the second largest in our country, and ongoing enhancements will be needed to keep us ahead of the curve. As a teenager in high school, I was drawn to this sector because of the endless possibilities in the Bahamas for Black men and women to expand the financial services sector in our country. It was and it still is the place where Bahamians can start a financial institution and watch it grow to eventually manage over $500 million in Bahamian currency. Men like Mr. Anthony Ferguson, men like Mr. Larry Gibson, Franklin Wilson, and Ken McCurr have inspired many like myself to push for greatness in this field. Those men all started from humble beginnings and have created local financial empires, in my opinion. But all of them will tell you that we must be, or that you must be, on the cutting edge to succeed in this field. And with the proliferation of digital and cryptocurrency businesses in our country, I am certain that we will be back here sooner rather than later to properly regulate and position our country to become the hub for this advanced financial niche. Sam Bankman-Fried is the founder and CEO of FTX, which is a cryptocurrency exchange. This millennial is one of the richest people in the world at the age of 30 and presently resides in the Bahamas. He saw fit that the Bahamas is an ideal place to further expand his business. The Davis administration is pressing forward to establish the world's first comprehensive regulatory regime for cryptocurrency and digital assets. We are a transformative government, and we are on the cutting edge. Well, Madam President, I ask that you indulge me for a bit, as I want to touch on pensions in the Bahamas. I was not able to contribute during the last session in this upper house, but this topic is something that I take very seriously. The value of a quality of life, or the value of a quality pension, is something that every working Bahamian must have access to. I reviewed the provisions for retirement benefits that is used in the Ministry of Public Service, and there are many amendments needed to that document. This government will reassess the benefits package and establish a pension fund for athletes who have represented our country internationally. I have been in extensive talks with the Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture and the Minister of State for Public Works about these pension plans. We have already begun and put together a committee to address these concerns. I've personally seen many Bahamians gradually fade away in their latter years because they were unable to sustain their standard of living in retirement. It truly breaks my heart to see our elderly having to live that way in their golden years. The 4 pension amendments that were passed on Monday is a step in the right direction for the much-needed pension reform. Agreed. The Register of Beneficial Owners Amendment Bill 2022 will assist in tightening the positions and reflect through requirements required to further comply with the international best practices. Transparency of beneficial information on companies and other legal entities registered and incorporated within the Bahamas. It would also seek to establish an electronic database of all beneficial owners registered in the Bahamas. The beneficial owner search engine, which will be commonly referred to as BOSS, is allow Bahamians to comply with the recommendations by the FATF. The full implementation of the BOSS system was a critical component that was required for our country to be removed from the anti-money laundering AML blacklist. But as we all know, on January 7, 2022, the EU Directorate General of Capital Markets recommended to the EU Parliament that the Bahamas be removed from the AML blacklist. But Clause 4 of this bill seeks to amend Section 12 of the Act, which will provide for the addition of the Gaming Board and the Ministry of Finance to request the search of the secured search system. Requests by searches by the Ministry of Finance must only be made in carrying out its duties under the International Tax Cooperation Act. One of the key things that we must realize in Clause 6 is the bill seeks to amend the act to provide for an administrative penalty regime, bolstering the enforcement tools to deter non-compliance with the Principal Act and comply with international best practices. So, we are amending and adding teeth to these bills to better regulate our financial services sector. With the amendments of the bills, the Financial Intelligence Unit will be able to impose penalties for any financial institution who doesn't adhere to the law. But as my fellow Senator Henfield spoke earlier about the concerns of family islanders in Green Turtle Key, I indulge you in this moment to think about the persons in the southern Bahamas. No banks, no financial institution, no way to access cash. So as a government, we are seeing fit that we must put implementations in place to improve the standard of living for these Bahamians. A complete revamping of the system. Myself, as a young senator and a financial professional, have proposed that we should seriously looking at trying to implement or put in place ATM machines as a bare minimum in some of these islands that have no access to cash. During my time in the offshore banking sector, I saw the gradual development and increased demand of certified compliance officers. This has ballooned into a robust unit in our financial services product. These amendments will only increase the demand for qualified compliance professionals in our country. And Madam President, that is a good thing. Most of us in here, I'm sure, have watched the movie Wall Street and have heard the famous quote by Gordon Gekko: "Greed is good, but those times have changed, and regulations must be put in place to prevent countless acts of improper financial transactions." We are all tasked in here this morning to maintain the integrity of the financial services sector in our country. Most times, or most of us, when banks fail, it's the obligation, or they fail the obligation, of debtors and creditors, which can become a big problem for our wider economy. We are the proverbial gatekeepers, and with supervision, enforcement, and regulation, we can preserve this sector and catapult it back to the top of the Caribbean region. Thank you, Madam President, and I am in complete support of these bills and these amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Quentin Lightburn. As many? The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Michaela Barnett Ellis.
Madam President, before I deal with the matter at hand today, I had one comment that I had failed to make at the last occasion. I wanted to make sure that I publicly thanked the organizers of the royal visit for bringing Junkanoo back to Bay. My daughter and I danced in the rain. My excitement grew when I read that the Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture said that there are plans for Junkanoo to be a part of this year's Independence celebrations. I can't wait. Unfortunately, though, I read a story yesterday that the Ministry of Health is once again paying close attention to an Omicron subvariant, and that it had spiked cases in the UK and the US. I love Junkanoo. When the Saxons are on Bay, my soul takes flight. We are all tired of this COVID life. We are tired of wearing masks and tired of being scared to cough and sneeze in public. But we must continue to be diligent. We will only have Junkanoo if the numbers are low. My fellow Bahamians, the government is still providing vaccinations and boosters for those over the age of 12. And we are eagerly awaiting the announcement that the government has secured doses for children under 12. We must continue to be diligent and practice those established health and safety protocols to keep our COVID cases down. So I rise to continue to contribute to the debate on the amendments in the Compendium of Financial Legislation. Madam President, the table amendments are drafted to bring those pieces of legislation in line with best practices. I support these tabled amendments as they will continue to make the Bahamas a competitive financial services destination. Madam President, we have known for quite some time that it is better in the Bahamas. And this is not just limited to our miles of sandy beaches, our crystal clear aquamarine waters, our friendly smiles, our delicious recipes, and our rhythmic music. We have developed a financial services industry that provides superior financial products with world-class service. We attract clients from all over the world. They move their money and assets offshore to the Bahamas. This has not gone unnoticed. The Bahamas has been accused of being a tax haven, which contributes to the erosion of the tax base for many G20 countries. Under the Minis administration, the Bahamas has diligently sought to meet and exceed expectations of the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force and those other international bodies. We have demonstrated that our financial services industry is above board. Under the Minis administration, the Bahamas was removed from the French list of non-cooperative states and the European tax watch list. This compendium of bills demonstrates our continuing desire to enact financial services legislation, which meets world-class standards for transparency, enforcement, discovery, and mutual assistance. The Bahamas must continue to demonstrate that it does not condone tax avoidance or harmful tax practices. We must continue to adhere to international best practices. It is important that the Bahamas continue to be a world-class financial services hub. Under the Minis administration, the Bahamas expanded and diversified its financial services industry with the introduction of the Digital Assets and Registered Exchanges Act 2020. The Bahamas has set itself up to be a digital currency hub. Andrew Roll, co-founder of Agio Digital, described the DARE Act as a monumental piece of legislation that strikes a fine balance between innovation and robust and regulatory framework. That's my good cousin. Bloomberg described the Bahamas as a global leader in e-money. The central bank launched its sand dollar digital currency last year under John Roll's innovative leadership. It was the world's first central bank digital currency. The reallocation of FTX to the Bahamas is an indication of international confidence in our jurisdiction and its financial legislative framework. Industry professionals have reported that as a result of the Securities Industry Business Capital Rules 2021, we are also seeing increased registration of crowdfunding platforms. It is predicted that we will continue to have significant growth in this business. The Minis administration made it a priority to provide micro, small, and medium businesses with assistance. They launched the Access Accelerator Small Business Development Center in 2018. They injected over $60 million into small businesses. The Business Capital Rules established a legal framework for crowdfunding, and ArrowACX was the first licensed platform. We look forward to seeing what else is to come. It is imperative that the Bahamas continue to remain a transparent and competitive financial services jurisdiction. The industry employs thousands of hardworking professional Bahamians, and it continues to attract the best and brightest minds from around the world. It is imperative that clients, potential clients, and foreign jurisdictions continue to have confidence in our jurisdiction. Madam President, I've seen firsthand in my practice what happens when offshore banks close. It leaves many Bahamians unemployed, and they are likely to remain underemployed for the rest of their lives. The current surge of murders is troubling, and we do not want to shake investor confidence in our jurisdiction. We continue to wait with bated breath for the government to say more on the issue, as they promised to do so over a week ago. I am pleased to support these amendments in this compendium of legislation. We are a well-regulated, compliant, and competitive jurisdiction. My fellow Senator, Mr. Lightbourne, suggested to bring the Bahamas back. I submit that we have always been there and that we will continue to be a world's leader, and the amendments to these legislation demonstrates such. May God continue to bless our Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Thank you, Senator Michael Bonnet Ellis. As many?
I know.
As many? The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Ronald Duncombe.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm grateful and thankful to be able to join with you and my colleagues today, and also to provide contribution to the debate on the bills before us today. Please permit me to offer my thanks and gratitude for the outpouring love and concern. So many expressions I've got in terms of sympathy that was extended to me and my family by the Senate. It's been a very tough time for me and my family. In the last 7 months, we've lost an aunt, a brother, cousin, and recently a sister. So my heart is definitely full, but I'll definitely do my work today. So in the midst of life, there's death. And although we mourn, we do so with the same hope that many other Bahamians have. The hope that we will indeed see our loved ones again. So, Madam President, we are indeed a country with beautiful beaches, lovely weather, fantastic hospitality, great food, and great touristic products that we offer. We are a nation of treasured marine fisheries and resources, a land of devoted athletes, scholars, researchers, craftsmen, professionals in a wide variety of industries. Madam President, the Bahamas is a place that's considered by many a land of opportunity. And in my experience as a tourism professional, I've been blessed to have the opportunity to meet so many people. And the one thing I found in my interaction with colleagues and visitors alike, that people are searching for opportunities. And this amendment bill before us is an indication of people in government that recognizes the true independence yields with opportunities. And while we are free from fair, progressive, and a growing economy, we are encouraged to seek and to provide opportunities. We must ensure that such opportunities are derived for good and not for bad purposes. This requires us to ensure that people is involved in the financial sector and related industries are involved for the right reason, with that right reasons, and in the right way. These bills assist our country, our nation, in ensuring that we build and maintain a reputation of accountability, transparency, and trust. Madam President, These provisions found in the Beneficial Ownership Act and the amendments presented by the way of this bill requires accountability on the part of the petitioner and also the implementation of exercise a standard degree of operation. That also meets the international best practices. Being accountable is a form of self-regulation. It protects the petitioner, the client, and indeed the industry. The supervisory authority definition that is being proposed by way of Clause 6 of the bill will allow us for the format and function of a more streamlined regulatory regime. The bill possesses in Section 17A, which includes provisions to include the supervisory authority taking into account of all relevant circumstances with imposing any administrative penalty, the supervisory authority issuing a warning notice detailing the issues that are alleged and the possibility amount of administrative penalty. Further to this section, we require the supervisory authority to act within a reasonable time frame and to respond of the outcome of its finding and decisions to the party involved. Madam President, this section requires regulators themselves to remain accountable to the process and to the parties involved. Regulations and requirements may appear to be difficult initially, but when best practices are integrated into the operation of regulatory industries, we see that the benefit to the practitioner is equally matched by the benefit to those who patronize and support their businesses. So together with self-regulation and compliance, we have a social and global responsibility across all industries to ensure that we do not support or find ourselves complicit in criminal activity. Privacy and secrecy cannot be any more important than safety and security. Crime is a problem, but I believe that each one of us here today believe that problems are meant to be solved. The proceeds of the Criminal Amendment Bill 2022, together with the Anti-Terrorism Amendment Bill 2022, continue in the aggressive fight and prevention against criminal activity. The strengthening of legislation to limit and prevent criminal locally and internationally is indeed necessary. These pieces of legislation seek to continue the progress and response to crime as the scale and complexity of criminal activity continues to evolve. Criminals should be made to feel and understand that a life of crime is not profitable in the Bahamas. We must continue to implement and enforce laws and procedures that make people think twice about benefiting from crime in any form in the Bahamas. Crime is an evil act. It destroys neighborhoods, families. It limits the potential of persons who could be contributing to our society. Madam President, crime puts an end to many, many lives. It's my belief that crime and the effects of crime have broad and far-reaching consequences. Our answer to any crime situation must just as collective and agreed as we are when it comes to relates to the criminal crimes, unfair dealings, terrorism, and proceeds of crime. Finally, I wish to make a few points on the Financial Transactions Reporting Amendment Bill 2022. This bill, together with the others before us, is evidence of government's commitment to keeping the Bahamas and the industry on the high standard of cutting edge and development, progress, and Bahamian-centered training and development. Clause 2 of the bill makes provision to amend Section 22 on the Financial Transaction Reporting Act 2018 and seeks to impose an obligation for every financial institution providing annual training to all staff and anti-money laundering, countering the financial of terrorism and provocation. This is great news for our country. This is what we need across more industries, training and growth development that allows for staff to learn on the job and to apply new and best practices to their routines. The Bahamas has strong training programs, strong leaders in industries who are constantly and effectively challenging their energy and knowledge into the next generation. However, this amendment would make training a requirement rather than a choice or consideration. For the financial services and related industry to thrive, we must require that the industry grows and develops and adopts best practices together, rather than simply those who elect to do so. The training and retraining of workforce will naturally comply industry to reinvent themselves, encourages competitiveness and innovation, providing growth and employment along the way. Madam President, we are a brilliant economy. However, when the most brilliant economy is susceptible to periods of uncertainty that's brought about us by natural or human resources, a business or corporate entity may find themselves changing circumstances overnight based on a bad judgment or a misstep, leaving employees out of job or benefits. An entire nation can suffer the same effect due to natural disaster, terrorism, or negative impacts. Total industries can find themselves wiped out of result. Globally, the issue of global warming and rising sea levels are negatively impacting more marines and agriculture-related industry. I've mentioned what can happen to a company, a country, and to planet Earth, because we do not live by ourselves. Whatever happens affects all of us. Likewise, we are all Bahamians, and whatever we do eventually affects someone else. So whatever decision that we make affects your neighbor. Sadly, it's often those people who are greatly affected that don't have no say. So these bills are important because in some way, shape, or form, they affect all of us. We as legislators have a duty and obligation to ensure that laws are in place and strengthened to protect against anyone from profiting from human trafficking, kidnapping, terrorism, or any other terrible crime. We have a duty and an obligation to ensure that stakeholders and all those in regulated environment are living up to their responsibilities. I'm grateful that my duty and obligation that I have, it's clearly defined that our goals are linked with the government, who continuously is going to display their commitment to promoting the advancement of the Bahamas and all Bahamians. We must always remember that we are united in love and in service. So, Madam President, it is with that in mind that I wish my colleagues and the Bahamian people a safe and happy Easter. I would especially like to say happy Easter to the people of Kalani and everybody who works with me in the community. my good senator here. Madam President, as I end my contribution, I log my support for all these bills. And thank you for your time. Oh, yes, that's true. Thank you very much. You're doing more than oh, that's true. They say no more. That's right. So actually, on Friday, we are hosting an Easter extravaganza at the Gambia School, and hopefully that my good Senator Barnett Ellis to the left and right of me, she's invited to come by. It's a great opportunity for all to come by. So I'm happy that my other parliamentary colleagues who live in the community, Kobe Davis, our Prime Minister, these three, Anne-Marie Davis, Lundy, all of the members of Parliament. Oh, and a good president will be there too. But ministers, senators, all invited. We want support. We have to understand that even though Gambia School is in Gambia, it still hosts kids from all over the Kalani communities. So it's a good place to come and stand and have fun. And thank you, Madam President. Oh, forgive me, I'm being told again, it's at 11 to 2 p.m., April 8th. All right, see you there. Thank you. No excuse.
Thank you, Senator the Honorable Ronald Duncombe, for your contribution. The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Maxine Seymour.
Thank you, Madam President. You all see a new day and a new day in reach out here, so don't always believe what you hear. Madam President, I'm grateful for the opportunity to stand in support of this compendium of bills, including the Proceeds of Crime Amendment Bill 2022, Register of Beneficial Ownership Amendment Bill 2022, and Anti-Terrorism Amendment Bill 2022. Madam President, when it comes to the Bahamian economy, no doubt everyone knows and would agree that tourism is the Lamborghini of the Bahamas. But of course, our financial services industry is a Ferrari. It is. And so we depend on our financial services industry, and it's important, just as tourism is. And of course, when we say financial services, we're talking commercial banks, savings banks. We have trust companies and offshore banks, insurance companies, a development bank, a publicly controlled pension fund, a housing corporation, a public savings bank, and credit unions. And so you see that our Ferrari is far-reaching, not as far-reaching as the Lamborghini, but indeed still very important to our economy. And so, Madam President, the reality is that if you own a Ferrari, and I wouldn't know personally, I drive a humble car. I don't know if the AG has a Ferrari, but I'm thinking that if you own a Ferrari, it really doesn't matter how the manufacturer put it together. Doesn't matter how fast it could go. Doesn't matter how good it looks. When you're on the road, Madam President, you have to follow the rules of the road. And so we find ourselves here presenting these bills because while our financial services industry is indeed a Ferrari, we're on a global road. And so whenever they put up the signs and, like we've heard, move the goalposts and they say turn left, turn right, you start to turn left, they say turn right again, you're driving. You do everything they say, but they say do this. You don't want to park your Ferrari in the garage, Madam President. You don't have this car, you want to drive it. So you just have to keep following whatever the rules of the road are to keep the Ferrari on the road. And so that's what we're doing here today with these bills, Madam President. Because in May 2021, our country applied to the CFATF for re-rating compliance of 10 Financial Action Task Force, which is the FATF. And from what I understand, we are in compliance with the majority of the 40 recommendations, but these bills are going to help us, of course, when we come back with that other one, to become fully compliant. And so this legislation here today is just tidying up what is already existent, based on our efforts to address some of the observations by the FATF review. So there's nothing substantive here in the amendments. We're just tidying up, if I may use that term. And while there's general agreement by all stakeholders, the only concern, Mr. AG, is that this legislation that's been tabled has been tabled without formal consultation with the financial services industry.
On a point of order on that, Madam President, the bills in their entirety were shared both with the Bahamas Financial Services Board and the Association of International Banks and Trust Companies, as well as the Bar Council for their review. So it was consulted widely. They wrote us formally, indicating no objection to the amendments and that they had the full support of the industry. So I asked my colleague, Senator, please withdraw that statement because it's entirely untrue and misleading to the Bahamian public.
Madam President.
Senator, the Honorable Maxine Seymour.
Yes, when I talk about formal consultation and wide-reaching, formal consultation, it's not just contacting one or two groups and sending it to them, but really having a conversation and having a proper consultation process with them, a formal process to involve all stakeholders across the financial services industry.
On a point of order, Madam President, because I'm not entirely sure where the senator is going with this. The bills in their entirety were shared with the Bahamas Financial Services Board, the Association of International Banks and Trust Companies, and the Bar Council, who would share and disperse it with their members, would come back with any comments, and there were no comments, and they were fully in agreement. And they were not shared last week, Madam President. They were, in fact, shared in November of last year, so way before they got here. So I would ask, Madam President, please protect the Bahamian people, and please expunge from the record any indication by the senator that these were not widely consulted upon and distributed amongst the industry. The member would know that the vast majority of participants in the financial services industry are members of both of those institutions, or at least one of them. And so it was widely distributed and consulted upon. So any indication otherwise is misleading the Bahamian people, and I ask that it be withdrawn.
Thank you, Senator Pinder. Senator Maxine, the chair requests that you withdraw those remarks or they will be expunged.
No problem, Madam President. I will withdraw those remarks, and they weren't they were in general to any administration because I would.
Thank you. Thank you for the withdrawal of remarks.
So those
You
withdrawn.
can proceed, please. Thank you.
And, pardon?
You can proceed.
Oh, okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, and so I would like to see us continue then to get to where we get structured communication out there and we form working groups and get a consensus position, in terms of whenever presenting or tabling legislation with the industries. And so either way, I understand the importance of passing this legislation with some urgency and moving swiftly. And so we have the buy-in of all the stakeholders in the industry. And so, like the Honorable Senator who talked about BOSS, as part of the beneficial ownership bill, Madam President, while we seek to make sure that, like Senator Duncan would say, that criminals are aware that crime is not permitted in the Bahamas, it's also important to protect hardworking business persons and their privacy. So I'm happy that, as has always been the case, that there's no publication of the register of beneficial owners and that the register is just a secure database that is open to search, of course, by relevant authorities as necessary. And so we continue with the responsibility to populate the database. And it's not new. Like I said, we're tidying up in these amendments because that's been enforced for more than 18 months. So we're just continuing to tidy up as they move the goalposts. Madam President, it's not a secret that Bahamians are among the brightest people in the world, and many of them work in the financial services industry. And so we've heard here today about our very own sand dollar, a central bank initiative to issue digital representation of our dollar. And we pioneered in terms of this, beating China's digital dollar by 6 months. And so, there's a Bloomberg article here where our own governor of the central bank, who's to be commended, John Roll, is interviewed talking about the sand dollar. And it says how the tiny Bahamas beat global giants in the e-currency race. And so it says John Roll, central bank governor since 2016, describes what his country has learned so far from its pioneering role in central bank digital currencies. And so we have a lot to be proud of in our financial services industry. And this is only an example. And so I would like to commend Governor John Roll, who, of course, was born in Andros. And we always talk about our islands, like we talked about the Sydney Point the other day and Cat Island. And so we know that we may be small in nature as a country and as a people, but we are very big and bright when it comes to our abilities and capabilities. And that same sand dollar, Madam President, is accepted by the government on My Gateway. And so we know, of course, what My Gateway is. So it seems the last administration did do something. And so I can encourage this administration to continue pushing My Gateway and the sand dollar because, of course, we're a hurricane-prone nation. And so sometimes when it takes a while for banks to mobilize and reopen, and of course, we've already said that in some of our islands, banks aren't even an option. And so this wireless platform is really helpful to us as a country. And so we need to continue to push it. Madam President, if anyone is well positioned for the future in terms of financial services, it's our country, because if anyone can, we can, especially now with such a confident and capable and competent Attorney General in the Bahamas. We can't go wrong in financial services these days, Madam President. And I'm just using his own sentiments and sharing them. And so we can't go wrong because, like I said, in general, we're very competent and capable. And just as the sand dollar is on top of the world, Madam President, we continue to succeed in the arts, in sports, and in other sectors. And so I look forward to the day when in financial services, like in other industries across our country, we have more persons with disabilities involved and active and employed and making a contribution because they're likewise capable, just like all other Bahamians are. And so I look forward to that. So, Madam President, we continue. This is a quite mature financial services industry that our country has, and we've done very well, exceptionally well over the years. And successive administrations have done their part to keep us where we need to be in terms of passing legislation, negotiating to get us off blacklist or wrong list like the last administration with France. And so we continue to do our part to make sure that our financial services industry strives, because nobody wants to have a Ferrari parked in the driveway at home, Madam President. And so what these particular legislations and amendments are that we're debating here today are simply microfiber cloths, I'll put it, to help polish up our economic Ferrari of financial services so that we could keep driving forward, upward and onward together on the global road of financial services. Therein I end. Thank you for the opportunity and happy Easter to everyone, especially the people in Sea Breeze. In that case, I'm not having an Easter egg hunt, but happy Easter to all of you, and God bless you all, and God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you.
I thank Senator the Honorable Maxine Seymour for her contribution. As many?
Thank you. I don't need that. Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam President. I stand for the wrap-up with respect to the Compendium of Financial Services bills that we debate today. And I want to thank my colleague senators for their enthusiastic debate and contribution to the bills, and just to address a few things that were raised throughout the debate with respect to the bill. I note that the Minister Henfield, my good friend, who's always invited back to the Office of the Attorney General, speaks about a global minimum tax that the OEC is putting forth. And he would know because it was his administration that committed to that and abiding by that. Certainly we recognize that there's a global minimum tax that the OEC has put forward, but we would not want to cause there to be panic unnecessarily with respect to a tax regime and with respect to a global minimum corporate tax, as that regime would only affect those companies that have a global turnover, global revenues of over $750 million. So in fact, the vast majority of entities operating from within the Bahamas would not fall within that type of tax regime that we would have to advance. It would be the larger multinational companies that would fall within that tax regime. But in fact, they would have to fall in that tax regime regardless, because all other countries who have signed on to it would put in place a similar tax regime. In fact, it would be to our advantage to put in our tax regime of a global minimum tax for those global conglomerates above $750 million, because that means we get the tax revenue and not somebody else. Because with that status of company, that tax revenue is going somewhere. We might as well collect it here from their activities within the Bahamas. So I just want to clarify that. I agree with you. We have to be prepared. And we have to analyze it fully, and we have to understand who it affects, but it will not affect the vast majority of businesses operating from within the Bahamas. The minister also suggested, rightfully so, that a comprehensive white paper should be prepared and consulted upon with the general public. The Ministry of Finance and Economic Development has been working on that white paper, has engaged the appropriate consultants who have done similar white papers for the government in the past. You would know who those entities are. To prepare that white paper in the context of the OECD mandate of a global minimum tax, to be able to share that and discuss that with the Bahamian public and those who may or may not be affected. So that is certainly in train, and we hope by, I would say, middle to end of summer to have that comprehensive paper prepared to where we could then have a public dialogue on that issue. And so I agree with that. The minister also mentioned issues related to the Post Office Savings Bank and having that institution be more applicable and material to banking within the Family Islands, especially, as my colleague said, in far-flung islands that do not have access to banking institutions. And in theory, that is correct. In practice, however, we do need to have a close look, and we are having a close look at the functions and operations of the Post Office Savings Bank, and in conjunction with other banking institutions that the Bahamian government is interested in, whether it has an interest in, to see if there is a reform able to happen, because frankly, the Post Office Savings Bank is an institution of antiquated existence that needs material modernization and material governance oversight to be able to effectively service what I think we all think it could service. And so that review is being underway to see how it can work in line with other banking institutions that the government has an interest in, and to modernize the governance to be able to provide the service compliant with international best practices while still being a service that can happen to Bahamians and those far-flung islands that do not have the presence of the commercial banks because they have removed themselves. So I wanted to update the good member on that issue, since he brought it to light and it was talked about, and it is highly relevant. Again, we are a government of consultation, and we do ensure that these items are consulted upon as widely as we possibly can. I want to commend the minister for raising the sand dollar and for commending the central bank and the Bahamas for advancing the sand dollar as a digital central bank currency. It was certainly a great achievement, and our government, and you'll be hearing some announcements on this in the upcoming weeks, look to put in place a proper framework to make it more materially impactful on Bahamians, and to fall in line with what we've been talking about with the Post Office Savings Bank, to allow better payment mechanisms throughout the country for Bahamians. There has been, the fact of the matter is, although it was a very novel idea by the governor, and he saw it straight to fruition, I congratulate him for that, the take-up has been rather minimal. And it is everybody's responsibility, regardless of where you sit, to encourage Bahamians to become more familiar with it, understand what it can do, understand how it can assist in commerce throughout the islands where there may not be banks, and frankly, to have the commercial elements of the country, whether through the Chamber of Commerce or otherwise, promote the use at the commercial level. Because if you don't have a business that accepts the sand dollar, it doesn't matter how much sand dollar you have, you can't use it. So collectively, I think it is our responsibility as leaders of this country to discuss these things with our people, to the citizens of the Bahamas, and to encourage them. Take it up, give it a try, and encourage businesses, take it up, give it a try, and to advance the penetration of the sand dollar throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. With that, and you'll be hearing about government's participation in the sand dollar in the upcoming weeks. I don't want to preempt anything, but I can perk your ear up on that one so you can pay attention in the coming weeks. So just with those few comments, Madam President, I wrap up and I so move for the second reading of these bills.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Registrar of Beneficial Ownership Act 2018. As many as are in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to amend the Register of Beneficial Ownership Act 2018.
For the second reading of bills.
Madam President, I move for second reading and committal of a bill for an act to amend the Proceeds of Crime Act.
It has been moved and second. Is there? Second. It has been moved and second that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Proceeds of Crime Act. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to amend the Proceeds of Crime Act.
For the first reading of bills. For the second reading of bills.
Yes, Madam President. Madam President, I move for second reading and committal of a bill for an act to amend the Anti-Terrorism Act to empower the Financial Intelligence Unit to impose an administrative penalty on any financial institution who contravenes any provision thereof.
I second.
It has been moved and second that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Anti-Terrorism Act to empower the Financial Intelligence Unit to impose an administrative penalty of any financial institution who contravenes any provision thereof. As many as in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to amend the Anti-Terrorism Act to empower the Financial Intelligence Unit to impose an administrative penalty on any financial institution who contravenes any provision thereof.
Further second reading of bills.
There are none, Madam President.
Committee of the Whole Senate.
Madam President, I move that the Senate do resolve itself in a committee of the whole, into a committee of the whole with the Vice President in the chair.
Is there a seconder? It is a move and second that the Senate do now resolve itself into a committee of the whole with the Vice President and Chairman of Committee of the Whole in the chair. As many as in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion is carried.
Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Chairman, in respect to the Register of Beneficial Ownership Amendment Bill 2022, I move that the long title be agreed.
Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the short title be agreed.
Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that the short title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed. The short title is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I move that clauses 2 to 6 be agreed.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that clauses 2 through 6 of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed. The motion is carried. Clauses 2 through 6 of the bill are agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that clause 7 of the bill be agreed.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that clause 7 of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed. The motion is carried. Clause 7 of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the bill be agreed in its entirety.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill in its entirety be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed. The bill is agreed in its entirety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, in respect of the Proceeds of Crime Amendment Bill 2022, I move that the long title be agreed.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye. Those who oppose, say nay. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that the short title be agreed.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the short title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye. Those who oppose, say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed. The short title is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that clauses 2 to 4 be agreed.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that clauses 2 to 4 of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed. The motion is carried. Clauses 2 through 4 of the bill are agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that the bill be agreed in its entirety.
Second.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill in its entirety be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed. The bill is agreed in its entirety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, in respect of the Anti-Terrorism Bill, the Anti-Terrorism Amendment Bill, a bill for an act to amend the Anti-Terrorism Act to empower the Financial Intelligence Unit to impose an administrative penalty on any financial institution who contravenes any provision thereof. I move that the long title be agreed.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye. Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that the short title be agreed.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the short title of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed. The short title is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that Clause 2 of the bill be agreed.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that Clause 2 of the bill be agreed. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed. The motion is carried. Clause 2 of the bill is agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that the bill be agreed in its entirety.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill be agreed in its entirety. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is agreed. The bill is agreed in its entirety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that the President do now take the chair.
It has been moved and seconded that the President do now take the chair. As many are in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose, say nay. The motion is carried. Madam President will now take the chair. Madam President, I beg leave to report that the Committee of the Whole has examined all bills before the Senate, having made no amendments thereto.
Honorable members, the Vice President and Chairman of the Committee of the Whole has reported that the committee has examined the bill, have examined the bills, having made no amendments thereto. Third reading and passing of bills.
Madam President, thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move for third reading and passage of a bill for an act to amend the Register of Beneficial Owners Act of Beneficial Ownership Act. A bill for an act to amend the Register of Beneficial Ownership Act 2018.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It has been moved and second that the following bill be read a third time and pass. As many as in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read a third time and passed.
A bill for an act to amend the Register of Beneficial Ownership Act 2018.
Order that this bill do now pass and the title thereof declared to be Register of Beneficial Ownership Amendment Act 2022. For the third reading of bills.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move for third reading and passage of a bill for an act to amend the Proceeds of Crime Act.
Second.
It has been moved and second that the following bill be read a third time and pass. As many as in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read a third time and passed.
A bill for an act to amend the Proceeds of Crime Act.
Order that the bill do now pass and the title thereof declared to be Proceeds of Crime Amendment Act 2022. For the third reading of bills.
Yes, Madam President. Madam President, I move for third reading and passage of a bill for an act to amend the Anti-Terrorism Act to empower the Financial Intelligence Unit to impose an administrative penalty on any financial institution who contravenes any provision thereof.
I second.
It has been moved and second that the following bill be read a third time and pass. As many as in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed nay. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read a third time and passed.
A bill for an act to amend the Anti-Terrorism Act to empower the Financial Intelligence Unit to impose an administrative penalty on any financial institution who contravenes any provision thereof.
Order that this bill do now pass and the title thereof declared to be Anti-Terrorism Amendment Act 2022. For the third reading of bills.
There are none, Madam President.
Consideration of House amendments, resolutions, discharge of select committees, notice of future meetings.
Madam President, I would like to renew all notices standing in the name of the government.
Orders for clerk. Adjournment.
Madam President, I move that at its arising, the Senate do adjourn sine die. And Madam President, as we will be adjourning beyond the Easter period, I would just like to take this opportunity to wish all senators, yourself, Madam President, colleagues, staff, and Bahamians at large a very, very happy, peaceful, and safe Easter period, Easter season.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
It is been moved and second that the House at its rising do adjourn sine die. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The motion is carried. Final adjournment.
Madam President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn.
Is there a seconder?
I second the adjournment. I'd also like to crave the indulgence of this honorable place to extend to the Bahamas, our colleagues, a wonderful Easter break. And remember that this is a season for us to take notice of the sacrifice of Christ and live and act accordingly in our country. I thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Mr. Leader.
Thank you. And just before I proceed to the final adjournment, I too would like to wish all of my colleagues, the staff of the House of Assembly and the Senate, and to the wider the Bahamas, a very happy, a safe, an enjoyable Easter. And may we remember the reason for the season of Easter. And I thank you all. Are there any other well wishes for Easter since we're here? Thank you. Final adjournment?
Madam President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn.
Is there a seconder? It has been moved and second that the Senate do now adjourn. As many as in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion is carried. The Senate stands adjourned, sine die.